Thanks so much, Kim. I'm going to jump right into things today because I want to be really mindful of everyone's time. I know people are probably starving at this point. And so I will jump right into things. But as Kim said, my name is Lauren. I'm with an organization called BOKS. And I'm going to share a little bit about that, but mostly about my time being invited up. First time I've ever been called a Southerner, which was a hysterical experience in and of itself. But it was easily one of the most impactful trips that I've ever been able to be a part of as, a BOKS representative, but also somebody working in the kind of sport and recreation field. So I am just going to share my screen really quickly. I have a bit of a presentation here for everybody. Not that you won't get tired of looking at my face. And then hopefully everyone can see it okay. If not, please let me know and I'll try to reshare it, but I think it should be all right. So just quickly before I begin, I did want to acknowledge the land that I'm coming from today. So I am from Calgary, as was mentioned, which is Treaty 7 land, which is in the region of southern Alberta, and the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy. So I am very grateful to be able to share this space today, but I do want to acknowledge as well that just doing this kind of land acknowledgement is not quite enough. So we do need to work towards truth, reconciliation, and decolonization in the work that we do. And that really actually hit home in a lot of ways while visiting the Detroit region on our trip. So we were able to visit in October of 2018, I guess. Oh my gosh, it was a long time ago now. But we were there for 5 days, and my colleague and I were able to spend 2 of those 5 days in Degas specifically, so at Degas school, and it was my favorite 2 days, I think, of being there. Before I get into that, though, I'll give you a little bit of background. So BOKS, or Build Our Kids Success, is a free physical activity program designed to get kids active and establish a lifelong commitment to health and fitness. So we provide tons and tons of resources that are all free and bilingual to get kids moving wherever they are, whether that's virtually in class or at home. So we are a charity initiative of the Reebok Canada Fitness Foundation, and our whole goal and mission is to enhance physical activity for kids across the country and make activity and play a part of every kid's day. So as I mentioned, we offer over 500 free activities. You can see this is our trainer hub here. It's like a digital library of all the things that we house. And our target group is based on kids from kindergarten to grade 9, but we do have programming all the way up until grade 12. So just a little bit about me. I am from Calgary, but I love to travel and explore. I was in my undergrad at Mount Allison University, so all the way out in New Brunswick, and then went and did my master's degree in Cardiff. And traveling is one of the most kind of missed things I think about this pandemic for me so far. It's been a real struggle to just kind of like stay at home. I do have an identical twin. This is my identical twin sister here, Michelle. We confuse people all the time, but it's the best friend I have ever had. And I feel very lucky to kind of have that built-in buddy for my entire life. I am super active. I have had many opportunities, fortunately, to join basically whatever activities I wanted. My parents were super open as long as I was moving and getting kind of active outside of the house. So, but the 2 things that kind of ended up shaping my experiences growing up the most were actually Irish dance and rugby. So I was a nationally ranked competitive Irish dancer and a 2-time university champion on my rugby team. So this is my rugby team here at Mount A. And as mentioned, I have 2 degrees in sociology, but my research for both actually focused on building resiliency through sport. So I was very excited when I was asked to come and kind of connect these pieces because they're very meaningful to me. And I think, you'll see me geek out about it in a little bit, but I do think that sport and recreation are really optimal grounds to kind of both introduce adversity and build resiliency as a result. And that comes from personal experience myself. So sport absolutely changed my life in many ways. I'll speak to that a little bit later as well. But I'm grateful every day for the opportunities that I had to participate and have access to these different experiences. Resiliency and sport and recreation. So if you haven't heard of the term resiliency or resilience, it is one's ability to overcome adversity, or more simply bounce back from tough situations. So really your ability to be able to be aware of what's happening around you, to assess and kind of observe situations, and then problem solve towards it. So I think, as I mentioned, sport and recreation are the perfect climates to expose kids to these kind of things. As we've all probably seen, there are opportunities like losing a game, super, super tough, whether that's competitive, or, a game in gym class, or a game out on the field in recess. Being able to kind of manage our emotions and feelings around losing is really, really tough. Even as adults, we struggle with these emotions and our ability to sort of overcome the feelings that come with losing. It's not a fun thing. But it is important as an aspect of life. We're going to come up against things as we go through an age that we lose, whether it's a job, whether it's friendships. If we're still competing in things, we do lose things all the time. So sport and recreation are a great way to sort of introduce these things in safe, contained environments. Conflict. We love our interpersonal and peer conflicts. It comes up a lot. You see over competitive or under competitive kids. This kind of competing notion of fairness. What is fair in a game? We test limits all the time, whether it's just in physical capacity. So we're fitness testing, doing something that really challenges our cardiovascular systems, or our strength conditioning, things like that. But even testing limits, around conflict, around peer relationships, testing limits around patience, things like being able to sit through instructions, rules. Those are all challenging things and can be introduced in really accessible forms through sport. But this also provides us a really incredible opportunity to teach skills that support that resiliency. So we come up against a problem, we come up against some adversity. How can we problem solve around it? The aspect of control, there are things that we cannot control, and there are things that we can control. So if we get upset, how can we manage our emotions and use communication skills to work through whatever problems that we're having? That plays into teamwork in particular. How can we kind of manage feelings of working together when there may be different skill levels involved, different personalities? There's always instances of being put on a team or being put with somebody as a partner that you don't necessarily get along with. Does that change the situation that we're in? Not necessarily. And we won't always have an opportunity to, for example, say, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to work with this part. I mean, you do, but we're hoping to be able to encourage more of the teamwork aspect and the work through aspect. There's also a really important skill around inclusion. So including people into that space to be able to overcome whatever it is that we're working through. So this falls under a lot of times like those kind of leadership, those leadership building activities and things that we kind of can join together to accomplish more. So I really do think that this is an incredible platform to be able to both introduce in safe spaces opportunities to overcome adversity and become resilient. And it is kind of a microcosm for, as I mentioned, the rest of our lives. It is a microcosm for society. It's one of those contained experiences where we can set up situations and teach skills to be kind of more successful in our daily activities outside of sport and recreation. So that I think is really, really cool. And what drew me to both my position in BOKS, but also just kind of sport and recreation work in itself. I mentioned that it really transformed my life. I was able to build so many skills in my own experiences through sport. Competitive dancing was so tough. It was so tough for me being able to, overcome losing and not placing when you wanted to, and having coaches that wanted you to perform at a rate that was higher than what you thought you were capable of, and overcoming some of those things. And rugby was incredibly masculinized, as an identical twin as well. It really kind of caused us to reflect on our identities and how we sort of built our own identities through a sport that was really, really individualized as well. We got pitted against against each other quite a bit in like practices and things like that. And we would have to balance, our relationship as twins and sisters, as well as our individual positions on the team, our individual identities as rugby players, as students, as all these kind of things, as friends. So it really informed a lot of my life and helped me kind of build confidence and competence in lots of areas that I believe have made me a much more resilient person in the grand scheme of things. So this is at the school. We were working with a group of middle schoolers here. And this was one of my favorite classes to work with. I'll come back to this in a bit, but this was myself and my colleague Kyla working in the gym very early in the morning on Halloween. So I don't need to spend too much time here. I believe pretty much everybody on this call is invested in the benefits of physical activity, but part of this is also the ability to make informed decisions, right? So when we get more active, not only do we see, of course, like increased physical fitness, so increased cardiovascular endurance, more activity time outside of, programming, things like that, but also the ability to make more informed decisions around things like nutrition, right? When we eat a certain way and then we go to get active, it may or may not contribute to how that goes, right? So reflecting on, oh, I just ate a giant McDonald's meal and now I got to go run for a long time. Like maybe I didn't really set myself up for some success here. And how can I do that a little differently next time? But we also see much improved scores, for example, in academic performance, the ability to sit and focus and overcome those feelings of stress and anxiety that come in a classroom, and executive functioning as well. So our ability to, have working memory. So sitting and remembering things that we're learning in class, remembering the rules of a game, for example, and also just like being able to decision make. So all of those things are just incredibly important and part of, again, why I think that this is such a great forum to start to both build and acknowledge opportunities to build resiliency in the kids that we work with. So these are a couple of pictures of our time in the Dayton region at DIGA. As I mentioned, we spent 2 days there. So these first 3 pictures here are our Halloween day. We worked with, I want to say, pretty much every kid in the school, every classroom in the school, which was amazing. This is us with the kindergarten class, which was so much fun. Like so much fun. It was such a great experience. This is my colleague Kyla and I outside. I'm going to show you a video of this moment in just a second, but we basically did a dance with the entire school during their kind of Halloween assembly. And it was just incredibly fun. And then the following day, we got to do a training session with the staff at the school. And I'll touch on that a little bit more as we go through, but it really was such an immersion into both the experiences of the staff and the students there and really how we could support some of these moments of overcoming some of the adverse situations that they were faced with. We also had some teaching moments ourselves around, our privilege in this situation and really learned quite a bit about working to build resiliency in a way that wasn't veiled by our own privilege. So hopefully you can all hear the sound with this, but the video I'm about to cue up is this one. They had a Halloween walk. So all the classes came through, all the parents were there, all the teachers were there, and everybody got to walk through the gym with their costumes and things on. And then we had a big dance party at the end. And this was easily like my favorite part of the day. You can see that we have absolutely no chill whatsoever. We had such a great time. And I think this was one of the most powerful things to see too was just how much everybody was moving. Even though they may not have gotten the steps right, I didn't get the steps right all the time, but to see how much everybody wanted to move with us and how much fun they were having. So hopefully you can all hear this. absolutely my favorite day of all time. You can see my face was painted like a cat. The kids pulled me aside, and because of course I had no Halloween costumes traveling, they really wanted to make me a part of their day as well. So it was super, super fun. But it was also the first time we had really seen all the kids moving together. Teachers were involved as well. You can see people are kind of smashed up against the walls because, like, yeah, it's embarrassing a little bit when people come in and they're like, we're going to do this dance. And you're like, I don't want to. But everybody got into it. And they really showed us that, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, how you're moving, but it's more fun when we get to do it together. So it was such a great day. And then the following day, we got to work with the staff, which was also really incredible. So I will kind of set this up a little bit with some of the moments that demonstrated really the true resiliency of students and staff when we were there. So the first moment for me that really kind of showed the resiliency was walking into the kindergarten classroom. Anyone who's worked with kindergartners before knows that, like, getting them to sit and do things that are focused and task oriented is so difficult. It's so difficult. They have so much energy. The attention span is not necessarily super developed at that time. And this was a busy classroom. This was working with the kindies down here in this picture. And we really saw, like, when we were getting them moving, getting them, active, but also with rules. So we played a game called freeze dance, where we would all move to music and we'd stop and then hold a balance and things like that. We really got to see kids sort of overcome these struggles of busyness, of focus and attention. And we sat still for probably 5-10 minutes doing breathing exercises together and working on our calm. And it was incredible to watch the shift from walking into the classroom of just chaos, like such chaos, joyful chaos, but absolute chaos, to being able to see all of the students sit down on the floor with us, mind themselves, mind their bodies, and follow along with the instructions was really incredible. The second thing that was pretty amazing to watch, I referred to it earlier in the presentation when we saw the picture of the middle schoolers kind of sitting along the bench there. They were not into it. They were not keen on joining us at all. They were not really, like, super stoked that we were there. It's hard to get them moving when you have a relationship with them. Even harder when they have no idea who we are. We have no previous relationship with these students. So building that rapport and building that trust was really initially quite difficult. We had some kids stuck up against the wall for the first, 10 minutes or so, and we're never going to force kids to participate. But eventually they started to kind of creep into the activities and start to play with their friends a little bit. And then students who really hadn't participated, like, all year up until that point. Granted, it was October, but we were still pretty far into the year for no participation. And a couple of them came right into the activities and started leading things, started instructing their peers in some of the activities, started going through the rules and, doing the countdowns and stuff like that. So for us, it was really, really unbelievable to see these kids who were pretty closed off to the activities, to the opportunities, to that engagement, jump in. Took a little coaxing, but they really eventually started to trust us in that process, in that it doesn't really matter how skilled you are in these areas. The important thing is that you are moving, you are participating, you are building relationships with people. And that's our goal. So to watch them from stuck to the wall to kind of overcoming those fears, those insecurities around, like, joining in, and then having them lead activities was just so special. Probably one of my favorite moments that I think was just really between me and this student. After the parade, she did not want to change out of her unicorn costume. She did not. She had completely melted down at that point, and she was entirely dysregulated, shut down, wouldn't speak to anybody, and she had jammed herself into a corner of, like, the boot room at the front of the school, and she wouldn't move. She wouldn't engage with any other teachers. She wouldn't, like, completely shut down. And fortunately, I have had some previous experience in working with some high-risk youth, kids with lots of different levels of functioning, some, intense behaviors and stuff like that. So I did have a bit of an advantage kind of walking in to break this down. I think it's also a little easier sometimes when it's a new face to be able to kind of interact with and work through some things with. So we just started tossing a ball back and forth. We had some footballs with us and we just started tossing it back and forth. And then eventually she started to kind of like turn and face me a little bit instead of just kind of like chucking it over her shoulder. And we made some eye contact and started going back and forth and adding a few more steps to it. She told me her name. We started to chat just about whatever was happening during the day. And then without even having to ask her, she opened up about why she was so upset and what we could do to problem solve around that. With her classroom teacher, with her parent who was there on the day, and how we could sort of move through her feelings just by tossing a ball. It was just that small moment to be able to kind of shift focus. We don't need to be so entrenched in our disappointment and our feelings and in how upset we are, and we can refocus to something that's fun, that's engaging, that builds a connection, and then be able to work through it together. So we kind of co-regulated through that moment. And then at the end of the day, she was like running me down the hallway to meet her teacher and show me her backpack and all this kind of stuff. And we were able to get her back into her regular school clothes to be able to go home and have a successful end of the day. So that for me was just like one of those moments where it was like, yes, even the smallest bit of engagement through sport or recreation can help shift us out of those really challenging moments and build some of those resilient pieces of relationship building, conflict resolution, problem solving, and eventually self-advocacy. She advocated for what she needed in those moments. We were able to support through that. And then we moved on and it was amazing. The training with staff was really unique as well, because we had sort of prepared it with the admin. We had gone through and arranged all the details. And that hadn't been communicated to staff at all. So when we arrived in the morning, they had no idea that they were going to be participating in a training that day. Luckily, we were able to kind of like bridge some time. I think it was about an hour and a half maybe that we spent with them, that everybody was able to kind of like shift their schedules around, be really flexible, which we were grateful for, and dive right in, regardless of how that had been communicated. It was a big hiccup in their day, because I'm sure as most people know, if you're working in a classroom, when you have an hour and a half out of your prep time and your day of planning, that's pretty significant. But they dove right in with us. They were all so keen to be able to participate in these things, to add some value to their physical activity repertoire with their students, and do a little bit of practice with us of like, it's really difficult to include these things in the grand scheme of a day, especially when you have so many check boxes to accomplish. But that being said, they got right in it with us. And we actually had a really important teaching moment for us through that training. So at the training, we had brought some print documents as well, because access to resources was a bit of a challenge. Connectivity is like nothing I've ever experienced. Going up north, it's much more isolated. There's a lot more challenges around access to resources. So we brought some print documents up with us, and we also brought some different like tools and activities. And one of those things was playing cards. And what we hadn't realized at the time was the cards had faces on them, like kids' faces on them. And the counselor at the school came up to us and said, "Are these the only copy of the cards that you have?" And I was baffled. I was like, I don't know, why would we have different like copies? And they said to us, our kids won't use these cards. They only have white faces on them. And it was such a teaching experience for us as well around inclusion and around, creating adversity where it was not intended. These kids need to be represented and see themselves in moments of activity, in moments of, recreation, that we needed to be more inclusive from our program. So we actually pulled all the cards from our printing and from our program, because they were not representative of the students that we were working with. And in that moment, we learned a big lesson about, we don't want to be the reason that kids have to go through more adversity. We don't want to be the ones who create adversity for them to overcome and be resilient for. So it was a really important teaching moment for us. And we really learned so much in the just 2 days that we were there with these students. It was, as I mentioned, it was the most incredible experience. And COVID is making me really sad that I haven't had a chance to go back, unfortunately. But I will wrap things up because I know that we're heading into the lunchtime now, and everyone's probably really, really hungry. So I will just leave it with, there is a sign up here. If you are interested in any of the resources, you can just take out your camera on your phone or something and scan that QR code. And then if you have any questions for me, this is my email address. You can reach out at any time, connect if you have any questions. But thank you very much for joining me today for this very quick presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll hang out for a couple of minutes and hopefully be able to answer anything that comes up.